That note, let's get started here. So first of all, hello everyone, and welcome to the monitoringresources.org orientation for BPA CORs. And if you don't know me, my name is Sam Semino, and I work for the USGS and PNAMP, and I am the project lead on monitoringresources.org. So in the past, maybe you guys worked with Becca Scully. She's moved on to a different organization, and so then I've taken over from her. And with me today is our leader, is the PNAMP coordinator, Jen Bayer, and my coworker, Quinnell Flanagan, who will be recording this presentation, and she'll be taking notes. And now, if you wouldn't mind, take a minute and to introduce yourself in the chat, which is typically located on that top panel. I don't actually know exactly where it is on your browsers, but it's a little chat box, and some of you have already been using it, so that's great. But if you just put your name into the chat, that would really help, because I know a few of you, just kind of show up as a phone number or something like that. So. All right, so to get this orientation started, we need to define what is monitoring resources. And I'm not really going to get into the nitty-gritty too much because you guys don't need that, but I'll give you kind of the broad strokes. So it's a structured online tool set that supports the designing of a project, the documentation of the metadata, and future project collaboration by making the data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So some people think of it as it's a way to connect, it's a way to create, and it's a way to discover. So along with documenting metadata and monitoring resources, we are working on connecting to other programs to help secure investments and to reduce redundancies, which is, a big sticking point. And ideally, information can be exchanged between all of these entities so that you will only need to document certain information once and not in multiple places. Now, unfortunately, these were all created individual of each other, so we're still working on making some of these connections. But this figure shows that many of the connections are already in place. And then, of course, today we're primarily going to be focusing on the connection between CBFish and monitoring resources. So starting from the CBFish side of things, we will be focusing on today is helping contractors fulfill their moons, I think you all call them, in that RM column of the statement of works. And then more specifically, if a user has the RM&E work elements 156, 157, and or 162, their metadata is documented in monitoring resources and does not need to be documented elsewhere. So this means documentation of protocols, methods, study plans, and sample designs are all documented in monitoring resources. And as you can see, there are links to the monitoring resources content in CBFish. You can see the study plan link, the protocol link, the sample design link with their various locations, and then you can also see the list of data repositories, all documented in monitoring resources. So to break this down a little bit more, the existing connections between monitoring resources and CBFish happens at the study plan level. Which means if a user has a work element with data collection, a work element 157, they'll need to create in monitoring resources a study plan, a protocol with collection methods, and a sample design with sampling locations and sampling dates. If they have a work element 162, a data analysis work element, they'll have a study plan, they'll have a protocol with analysis methods, and they'll have a sample design with an area of inference. Now, most are going to have a combination of both a 157 and a 162 that are related to each other. And so then they'll have a study plan with a protocol with data collection and data analysis methods, and then a sample design with their sampling locations and dates and an area of inference. And so a lot of the times what contractors will forget is that area of inference piece. We've been making that a little bit more simple recently. So the purpose behind the documentation of the metadata is really to give longevity to the data itself, right? And to make it more interoperable and reusable. So there is that work element deliverable that you all know, an accessible error check data set with metadata. So these data sets need the metadata to go along with them. And a lot of data repositories require metadata documentation. Like if we look at StreamNet, they have the coordinated assessments exchange, the trends data, and their data store. Those all require metadata to go along with them. So what exactly will users be documenting in monitoring resources? Today, what I'm going to focus on is the BPA workflow, which many of you may not know about yet. But this is the documentation of metadata. Using the BPA workflow will allow users to document all of their required fields in a BPA contract if they have those work elements 157 or 162. And it's all done in one user-friendly workflow. And then, so there are a lot of pieces and parts here, but the BPA workflow organizes the documentation process and simplifies the effort. So all of these elements have existed in monitoring resources before the BPA workflow. The BPA workflow is really just an organizational tool, but it will allow you to create a study plan and then link to an existing protocol or a user to do this. Or a user could create a study plan and create a new protocol, and then the user can create one or multiple sample designs associated with their protocol and study plan. So these are all linked together. And then ideally, after completing documentation, users can then perform their field work, go out into the field, collect their data, and then they return to monitoring resources and document their actual sampling locations. So this is what we've called the validation of their actual locations that they sampled. And then they can also add like post-implementation notes and things like that. So the workflow and the validation of actual events is kind of new, and it might be new to you all. So we're going to go through that here in just a second. And that is my cue to go to the live tutorial. Oops. All right. So here we are at the Monitoring Resources homepage. And when a user is logged in, they'll have their name at the top of the page. It'll say welcome, whatever their name is. And then they'll also have this portfolio menu item. And the portfolio has a drop-down that allows users to view all the stuff they own, broken down into content types. So they can go to my study plans, my protocols, my methods, and so on. Another way to get started, especially for new users or someone starting from scratch, they'll want to navigate to this document section. You can just click on document here. and then they can create an individual study plan, an individual protocol, individual methods if they want, or they can go to the BPA workflow. And so the BPA workflow, like I mentioned, allows the user to create all their BPA contracting requirements in one space. Now, I'm not going to start from scratch today. So I'm gonna go to one of the BPA workflows that I've already created. So I'll go to that portfolio, my BPA workflows. I'm just gonna do this Idaho snorkel surveys. So here we are in a BPA workflow. Typically, the first thing you'll do if you're starting from scratch, you'll give the workflow a name. This is just for your own use. It's not really recorded anywhere else because the workflow is just an organizational tool. So here we are. We are going to do this Idaho snorkel surveys workflow, and step one in the BPA workflow, you'll notice that all of the required fields have a red asterisk, and they're also in this left-hand column. So these are open circles. If they aren't complete, you get a check mark once they're completed. Now, as we move down, one of the fields in the study plan basics here is to add an existing protocol. So if the user, if your contractor has already created a protocol, they can find it in here if it's finalized or if they are the owner of it, and they can add it to their protocol or to their workflow in their study plan. And once they add a protocol here, they have the option to automatically fill in this background section and these objectives section, because the background and the objectives are typically the same in a protocol and in a study plan. So they can it's just a button they click and it autofills the background and objectives. Now, if they don't have an existing protocol, they'll fill in the background and they'll fill in the objectives here. And then, scroll down a little bit and there's additional information. This stuff isn't required, but it can be really useful. But you have quality control and reporting, personnel and training, schedule and budgeting. So as you can see, some of this stuff doesn't have anything in it. It's not required. It doesn't affect your percentage here or your required fields. And then when you're all done with the study plan, and I'll get to this sample design thing later, most people won't have a sample design associated with their study plan in the BPA workflow, but all users should save their study plan, and they can also request finalizing of their study plan. And the only way to request finalizing is if you do fulfill all of these fields. So that'll be a grayed out button if you haven't requested, or if you haven't filled out these fields. So then the next step of the BPA workflow, and what a lot of contractors will have to do, is this protocol step, because they won't be adding an existing protocol. So we click on step 2, protocol. And it's similar, this basics backgrounds is very similar to the study plan. That's why we autofill that study plan if you've already created a protocol. But you have your rationale, your objectives, and then literature cited. And then what's important here is you can add documents, figures, and forms. That's a really useful thing to add to your protocols. And finally, there's a citation for your protocol, which you can auto-populate as monitoring resources if you want. But that's not all of the protocol. There are other sections like this metrics and indicators section. And if you've created a protocol outside of the BPA workflow, what you probably did was create methods first and then later added your metrics and indicators, or your users have. We've flipped it around in the BPA workflow because adding metrics and indicators first helps populate methods for you later, which is really useful. So another really good idea for you CORs is if they have a data sheet, their data sheet should approximately look like their metrics and indicators. So they might have a fish length, spot on their data sheet. They should have a metric for fish length here. So that's something to check for if you're reviewing someone's protocol. So documentation of metrics and indicators can be a bit time consuming, but essentially the title is whatever they want it to be. But then we have these categories. So if it was fish length, you'd just go to these categories. First category is fish. Second category, we'd find length in here, length, fish species, and then we can choose, are we measuring adults? Are we measuring a range of adult and juveniles? All that stuff. And then you would just save it and it would populate here. Now, what's great about doing your metrics and indicators first is then when you get to this methods section, or when users get to the methods section, if they want to add a method, this is going to take a second because I have a bunch of metrics, but there's going to be suggested methods for them based on the metrics and indicators they've already added. So it'll save users a ton of time when they are adding their methods or creating their protocols. So see, I have a metric here called channel type. You can see I've already, some of these methods that I want to add have already been added because they're already there. But I can add this channel class here if I wanted to, and click save, and it would add that channel class method to this protocol. And then what's great is you can customize these protocols. So say, this locating and establishing the start of the survey method is someone else's method. You can click on this little pencil and paper icon, customize the method to make it more appropriate to your procedure. What's also great about adding methods that have been suggested to you is once you get to this metric method mapping, because all users need to then map all of their metrics to their methods, but if they added a suggested method, they don't have to do that mapping. It's already pre-mapped for them. So it's a really good time-saving step by documenting metrics and indicators first, then documenting your methods, and ideally adding pre-existing methods that are already in monitoring resources, and then doing your metric method mapping. Now, not everyone is going to have a method already in monitoring resources. In this methods place, you can create a new method. It will direct you outside of the BPA workflow. That's the only time you're directed outside of the BPA workflow. But once it is saved or finalized, it is added to your protocol automatically. So it's pretty cool. It's still pretty useful. And then I know I'm kind of running through this fairly quickly, but I want to leave time for questions at the end. So next thing I'm going to do is we're going to jump down to sample. One more thing I'll mention. If I go back to the protocol, step 2, I just click it, it'll take me back to this basics objectives page. At the very bottom, you can request finalizing of your protocol as long as the fields are filled in. Finalization does require a review process. So that can take a little bit of time, but the reviewer is typically me. So people request finalization. I might give comments back. They might fix something, and then it's good to go. But it's also important to save your work within this BPA workflow as well. So going back up, the last thing that's a requirement in the BPA contracting process is a sample design section. Now, a study plan can have multiple sample designs associated with it. So I can create a new sample design, and in that scenario, the sample design I've already created and the new sample design they would have the same protocol and the same study plan. And this is pretty common. A lot of protocols have multiple sample designs, or study plans have multiple sample designs. But the one thing to keep in mind here is each sample design, they will be going through the same protocol. So if you have different or different protocols, you would need to create a new study plan, because you can only have one protocol per study plan currently in our system. So getting into this, I am going to edit this snorkel streams to estimate juvenile densities sample design. What you need to know on this basics page is you have your title. When you are creating a new sample design, there's a list of sample designs to choose from. It doesn't matter too much as long as it's a data collection sample design, which one you pick, because you can change it later. The only difference is if you chose an inference design from the original selection menu, the inference design has a different workflow because all you're doing is documenting area of inference. So that in that case, you can't really switch over to one of these other designs. But all of these have the exact same workflows. They just have different titles to them. The one other thing are GRITS designs. The actual selection of your sites you would need to do outside of monitoring resources. We used to have a GRITS selection process, but we don't anymore because it's honestly too difficult to maintain, and people can do it easier and faster in like programs like R or something like that. But yeah, so spatial design category, that's important. And then data repository. Something new here is we have one data repository. We can add multiple data repositories. You can just start typing in one. So I can add StreamNet data store to this one. So that's a nice little useful thing. Now I just copied someone else's sample design, so that's why this is a copy. So that is your basic background information. The next step in your sample design is to select your sites, or for your contractors to select their sites. And because this is a map, it'll take a second. But it's important to know you can add someone else's sites if you know of them. You can search for them, search by site name. You can look for particular regions. If you know certain filters, you can search for sites that way. But most people are going to be adding their own sites. And if they have just a few sites, they can click on this create new site. They can type in the name, type in latitude and longitude, or they can grab onto these little markers and put them on the map. I don't suggest this if they have more than 5 or 6 sites, but that is an option. The other, probably more useful option is they can upload a CSV file. And the CSV files have to have the appropriate column headers, but you can download a template of that and then just copy your stuff into that template. So it's pretty easy. And then you have all your sites uploaded onto your map here. You can double check them if you want and save it. And so that is uploading your sites into the BPA workflow. Now, if you worked on sample designs outside of the BPA workflow, this area also, or this page would also have another button down here that is honestly difficult to see, that would say area of inference. So what we've done instead is we've included this area of inference section here, because a lot of people were skipping the area of inference. And if you have a work element 162, you're required to document that area of inference. So now you can just click on this section here. And of course, this isn't a required field because some people won't have 162s. But now it takes you to the area of inference map. You have layers you can kind of sort by. And then you can just click on one of your points. And it'll give you a list of areas of inference. So I'm going to add this South Fork Clearwater, and all I need to do is click on the title, and you'll see it added it down here. So it's pretty simple, and you just have to click Save. You can also add notes to your area of inference. It's not required, but sometimes it's useful. Just click Save. All right. And then the last thing, well, before you get to finalization, is to plan your schedule. This is the dates that you will be doing your sample design. And so you can do it really simply. You can choose a start date and an end date. And that's essentially saying that the user is going to be going to every one of their sites at least once a year, or just once a year. Now, some people are going to have a panel where, you know, maybe they go to half their sites on odd years and half their sites on even years. And you can do that here. It takes a little bit of, you know, playing around with to get it right, but it's pretty straightforward if, or once you get the hang of it. And then what's new again is some people have asked, you know, to provide just more details to their schedule, and they can, we provided this new text box where they can essentially just write in other things, or they can, you know, upload graphs or something of when they will be scheduling certain areas. So a nice little additional thing that's new to the BPA workflow. And then finally, you can go to finalize. And I haven't clicked on this because, or I haven't finalized these sites yet. One, because it is a copy of someone else's, which I'll just delete this copy later. But also because I wouldn't have been able to show you step by step once I finalize it. But once you get to the finalized page, you can see your map again. You can see your sites, which is great. You can see your area of inference. And essentially, it's just saying every one of your sites is sampled every year. And if this was a panel, it'd be a little, this table would be a little more in depth, a little more broken down by year. And then I didn't have any area of inference notes, didn't have any plan description notes. And so I'm just going to finalize this. And so here's a little thing just to keep in mind. Once it's finalized. You can always version your sample designs though. So if you need to make changes to it later, contractors can version. So this is going to take a second to finalize. Now, one thing I'll show you, at the top of all of these pages, throughout the workflow, you have this thing called study plan summary. And I think this is going to be really useful for you all when you're looking at one of your contractors' projects. So the BPA workflow, we went through all these steps, you know, it's 100%. You can just jump over to the study plan summary. And all that information is here in one view. So we have our study plan basics that, you know, we entered in. We have the protocol. It's going to take a while for these pictures to load, but you can go directly to that protocol, or you can kind of get, you know, a general idea of the protocol. So you have your protocol title, your citation, photos, figures, forms. Then you have all the methods. We can get a little glimpse of each method by clicking on these arrows, not having to leave the study plan summary, or you could go to the method directly by clicking on View Full Method. And then we have all of our metrics and indicators all listed here, which is great. We have our sample designs here. And some will have more than one sample design. So there's your sample designs. You have your collection events map. You can click on these and get a better idea of your map. And then all of your data collection events. And then we also have the area of inference. So we have these two different areas of inference that I selected. So you can see it all in one spot, which is great. And then, of course, at the end, we have some of that optional information from the study plan, which is quality control and reporting, personnel and training, schedule and budget, stuff like that. So it's really nice to come to this, go back to these maps and check things out. And especially, if you are reviewing a study plan, and it's useful information for your contractors as well, because they can come see their entire project in one spot, and then they can go to each of their individual documentation types. So they can go to their sample design after their field season, and here's their sample design by itself. They came back from field season, great. The one thing I wanted to show you all, in addition to everything else, is this new validation of data collection events. So once they've gone out, as long as they have a finalized sample design, once they've gone out into the field, they can return to their sample design, click on this validate data collection events, and then they can choose what year they want to validate. They select the day that they started. So I can type in 6/1/22. And then they can either select all of their sites and click validate. That would be like, yes, we went to all the sites we thought we were going to go to, or we had planned to go to. Or they could upload a CSV, which is probably going to be more common if they have 97 sites here. It's probably going to be easier to upload a CSV of their sites. And again, we have a template for them to follow. They upload their sites, and then they can validate that new list. And when they validate a list from their CSV, it'll show which ones were planned and which ones were unplanned, which is useful. And then once it's all validated, I could click on this validate. I'm not going to, because these sites are already in our Monitoring Explorer. But if I clicked validate here, they would then show up in Monitoring Explorer. And of course, it is hidden behind the little menu. So then, I'm looking for Idaho Department of Fish and Game. This is just a little filter I've already done to save some time. Click on a data collection event, and it gives us all the information from that data collection event, including it'll take us back to the study plan summary. It'll take you directly to the protocol. You can get an overview of the entire program in Monitoring Resources. You can go to, we're going to change the title of this, Origin, but you can go to the site where, in this case, it would go to Idaho Fish and Game's project page. It'd be an external page. And then, you can see more details about Idaho Fish and Game, and you can see the data repositories associated with this data collection event. So it's a really useful thing to discover all of this information along with other data collection events. So, if you wanted to compare that site with other things around that area, you could. And I think that is about it for the live demonstration. The one other thing I will show you just quickly, still in the live demonstration, is this little learn area at the top of monitoring resources. This is a good place to direct your contractors if they have any questions. We have frequently asked questions. We have a glossary because some of the terms in monitoring resources probably differ from what they may use. And then we have this training resources section, which is really useful because we have videos on like adding a colleague in monitoring resources, which we recently made easier. You can add a colleague on every documentation type. And then we have a BPA workflow, monitoring resources.org orientation. This is what I gave to project sponsors and users a few months ago. We have a guidance document on the BPA workflow. We have things like cloning a protocol or creating a method. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good training resources here. And I am going to jump back to our presentation. Like I just said, we have this monitoring resources training area, training resources. Couple additional tips, and this is a big thank you to Russell, who helped me with this, Russell Scran, who helped me with this slide. But the comprehensive view of the study plan, protocol, and sample designs can be found in the study plan summary, like I just showed you guys. That's going to be really useful. Location information in the SOW is supplied from the sample design. And so while it doesn't have a moon on the SOW grid, you can select the location from the context menu on CBFish. And here's a little picture of that. And then the protocol and study plan background, rationale, and objectives should match work element descriptions. So if the description of the work element is something like conduct monitoring, consider copying background into the SOW work element description. And then as a COR, you should ensure the protocol and the work element descriptions are consistent. So if descriptions are inconsistent, contact BPA RM&E staff, which is information here. So this, we will be posting this all on YouTube. I can probably share slides with you guys if you want as well. But yeah, maybe take a picture of this slide as which might be useful. But the contact for monitoring resources team is this gs-monitoring resources at usgs.gov. Here's a couple useful resources and monitoring resources. I showed you the training resources section, FAQ page, and then we have that BPA workflow guidance document. And then for CBFish content help, your RM&E project subject matter expert is, probably Russell Scranton, but see project contact. And then your RM&E implementation lead is Brady Allen, and email support is rmesupport@bpa.gov. And now I will open it up to Q&A. We have 15 minutes. I know this was kind of a fire hose.
Before we do that, I wanna say just like 1 minute, because it was a super fire hose. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Russell, and thank you, Elizabeth Santana, who helped us get this going. Santana. This is at least a dozen years of work going back to the original thing was called monitoring methods. It's grown quite a bit. We've also tried to shrink it quite a bit to make it simpler, easier for project sponsors to do this work. We do have some other users in addition to Bonneville, which is great, and I think proves that really what we were trying to do when we started this way back when was create a place where the who, what, when, where, and why of salmonid and aquatic monitoring in the Northwest was available in one place. And that's a big ask, and it's hard to make a tool that fits everything. And of course, technology changes over time. So we've tried to streamline it in some cases, but we still feel it's really valuable for Bonneville and others. It's a big documentation tool for the agency, but also for the region. It provides persistent, thorough, as you saw, and also public documentation of the work that you all fund. And as CORs, you guys have a big job to help make sure that where the dollars are going is tracked, and it actually comes back to help us with recovery. It can also help with things like review. The councils, ISRP and AB, for example, also benefit from that new study plan tool. For example, their study plan summary, where they could see everything in one snapshot. We're also working harder. Well, I wish we had thought of this when we started, but we are working very hard with StreamNet in particular, but others to create better and more simple linkages between the metadata published here and monitoring resources and where the data are published. You could see that the data repository links required in the last bit there on the Monitoring Explorer. You can get access to where the data are. The idea is that all this detailed documentation about how the data were collected and why is also really relevant when you just go to a place that has data. So I'm looking at some data, I want to reuse it. It's really important to know how it was created in order to appropriately reuse it. And also to be able to give recognition for when you do reuse someone else's data. This is a really good way to have this really thorough metadata. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of stuff, there's a lot of good reasons why. We're also really interested in your feedback. So I'm going to stop and just leave it at that. Thank you all.
Yeah, go ahead, Russell.
I was just going to say again, for context for everybody, as a COR, the main point, if you could go back to one of the first slides at CBFish, is contractors are going to have to do most of the work in monitoring resources. Your job is just to make sure that they can select the study plan on the Harmony metadata tab. So when you get there, just highlight a comment, which is one more slide back, I believe. Oops. That when you went forward, there you go. When they get to this Harmony metadata tab, all that people have to do in CBFish is select the sample design, which is the middle blue thing with the largest one. When they select a sample design, then they have to select what year it's being done. Most of the time, the problems that people are going to have, where you're going to need to help them, is if they can't find their sample design, it's probably because it was not finalized. Or if they don't see the sample design, the other issue is that the years might be out of range, and so they have to edit the sample design to be active for the current time period. So those are two common errors that you see as a COR. And so as a COR, you just need to be able to know that they can select these, what they need to select. You can read it, look at that as consistent with the statement of work description. But again, it's really the sponsor's job to document that information. So I just wanted to highlight that as just a general principle.
Any other questions, comments?
So I see that Viral has asked for the slide deck. We'll definitely share the slide deck and make sure you have easy links to like the Learn resources and whatnot. Sam can put that together and share it with you all in an email. We definitely want your feedback and also the project sponsors' feedback. If you hear that people are frustrated with a particular step or don't know how to reach the USGS staff that support this tool, we want to hear that for sure. Sam and Quinnell is our newest employee here, but Quinnell is helping to create methods and also is available to help project sponsor staff with their work. So, and I see Russ asking for the recording. We can definitely do that. We really want this to be a back and forth. And like I said, I know CORs have a big job to connect with. I'm sure all of you have multiple projects and people have different needs. So please let us know what would help you do your work and also what you're hearing from the project sponsors, and know that that review step that Sam mentioned, that's Sam largely and Quinnell soon. And our review is not to say that this is appropriate, that the methods and the design that the project sponsor has proposed, that's not, we're not here to tell them that, no, that's not going to give you the answer to your science question. What we do is review for consistency with the tool to make sure it's understandable. And so we're really striving for effective communication, and leaving that decision, is this the right science, to Bonneville, to the ISRP, to whomever is the appropriate reviewer. So don't want to people to misunderstand that review step, but it does give us a good way to make sure the content in MR is well constructed and useful to others.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Jen. And I just kind of wanted to go back to the study plan summary page. This is on any study plan. You know, study plans are linked to CBFish. That's the linkage. So anything that's in CBFish should have a study plan, and so then it'll have a study plan summary page. And so anytime you want to look at the entire project, it'll be a little button at the top. This will take me back to the workflow, but even on an individual study plan, you'll be able to see this button at the top that says study plan summary. You could also search for study plan summaries in the menu if you want, but it's probably going to be a lot easier if you just are directed to a study plan from CBFish, which I think it takes you to the study plan documentation page, but just look for this study plan summary button at the top. Get all the information here. And it sometimes takes a while to load these maps. So just be patient. Any other questions? And yeah, we will post the recording so that people can see the live tutorial, and we will provide the slide deck, which is just kind of that background information and stuff like that. But yeah.
One other quick comment for everybody. I think you covered it a little bit, but just the context of versioning. If somebody does something different, it's just a reminder that, okay, if somebody does a new location, I said this in a chat comment, that if they add a new site, they've been doing 5 screw traps for 5 years, but next year they want to add a new one. It's important that, you know, that study plan, or the sample design that's associated with those 5 sites gets retired or gets versioned. All they have to do is hit a version button, save it, add a new site, and then they can link to and select that sample design in the statement of work for the next year. The idea is that everything gets copied and you just delete or change what changes for the next year. So if a protocol changes, that they decide to change a method, or if a sample design changes where they change a location, then that versioning is important. And Sam, you and PNAM staff will be able to help the contractors do that. That's the main thing. So as a COR, just look to see, are the sites correct? Are the methods and metrics generally consistent with what you would expect? And if you have questions, again, contact your Harmony support team staff at BPA.
Thanks, Russell.
I think you filled them up, Sam. So if you all have questions anytime later, when you have, like, you know, perhaps this is overwhelming, do reach out to us.
Yeah, and you
help
can
us help you.
Yeah, I gave you the email for RMNE support, you know, and the GS monitoring resources. But you all can also just email me directly if you have questions. And did that. I did not add to the slide. It was a bit of an overlook, but my email is, which you all got because I've been emailing you, as scimino@usgs.gov. And put it in the chat.
We'll send you all this stuff. We'll send you the link to this. We'll send you the slides. So thank you all. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jen, Sam. I'll hang out for a second.
Sounds good.